Hello, everyone. Welcome to the director's session of House of White Lilies. I'm Dee Ken. I'm the screenwriter and co-director of the film. And I'm here with Kayla and Amma. I'll let you two introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amma. I am co-director, co-editor, and cinematographer for House of White Lilies.
Hey everybody, I'm Kayla. I am the co-director and co-producer for this film.
Awesome. So super excited to talk with you two. We shot this last summer in June, so it's really exciting to like come together and just reflect on the process now that we've had a little bit of breathing room and now that we finished editing. So, Kayla, I think you have a question ready for us, so you can kick us off.
I hope that you all got a chance to see the film, hopefully before coming in and hearing our reflections on it. But I wanted to start by addressing my co-directors in this space, just to touch on the thing they're most proud of throughout this process. What are some of the areas that brings them the most joy when they look back and reflect on this entire process?
Yeah, so for me, one of the most salient parts of being part of this project and why I was interested in the first place was being able to collaborate with Kayla, with Dana, but with all the cast and the crew as well. I think the collaboration is the most proud thing. The fact that we're able to use Chancey's song as, a prominent point in our film. The fact that Dana did all of the audio and produced all the music. The fact that we had so much learning and collaboration on set. I remember many times where Destiny would give some direction and help and give input, and the same with Chance as well, and Shane and Jackie. Everybody on the cast was all giving their input throughout, and I think that really is speaks to the testament of everyone's dedication to the project. And I think it's also something that you can see in its output. It feels very much like a lot of hands went into creating it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Amma. I think the collaboration from start to finish has just been really, really special. It feels like everybody poured their heart and soul into the project, and stepping outside of the role that they're supposed to be there for. Like Destiny helped find the house that we shot in. Alma, you helped me a lot through the editing process, like especially with even some of the audio. um, Kayla, you and I sat down and did some editing together. Like, I just feel like everybody had their hands on as much as they could, and I thought that was really special.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump on with you two in this, the collaboration and the fact that we somehow pulled off, I feel like seamlessly, not perfectly, but seamlessly, like coming together as co-producers in almost equal part. And like we stepped into the gaps of where each other needed to step into. And I also feel like we created a lot of space for people to have to put their input into the project and also to get, feedback on the project throughout the process. And I think it just made it fun. Like it didn't feel like we were stepping on each other's toes. It didn't feel like, somebody was trying to jockey, like there were any power dynamics that we had to navigate on who's in charge, who has the final say, for somehow. And that was kind of the feedback I think we've gotten from everybody, from the actors and talents to the supporting folks who've helped pour into this film of just like, you guys work really well together. And you guys do a good job of bringing this to life like as a dynamic. So yeah, I think that was my favorite part was just the co-producing aspect of this film. Felt very equal.
Yeah, so I guess I can jump in with my next question. So I was sort of interested in because like we mentioned, we shot this over the summer, but we started, and I know you guys came up with this idea a long time ago, and we started speaking about this, I think sometime early last year. But since then, the story has gone through a lot of multiple evolutions. So I was wondering what core themes or aesthetics that were part of the project at the beginning that you carry throughout, or did you keep coming back to?
Yeah, I feel like I want to jump in. I feel like the evolution of the story itself, I would say the essence of it actually remained throughout the whole thing of, black friends coming together and working through some type of psychological like turmoil. Um, and I think as I went through different rewritings of the scripts, the characters just got more in depth, and I was able to talk to, especially like speaking to men when I was writing characters that are from a male perspective, like what does this dialogue feel like to you, or how would you say this? And that's how the characters kind of got more personality that I think was more authentic, and I think that was really cool. um, and then I just feel like by the time we got to actually shooting it, I never thought as much about the visual aspect of it. I put together like the storyboard of it and was pulling from like Japanese inspiration, like this dance, Buto dance that is like very dark and kind of creepy, and um, trying to find like pictures of like the Appalachians and like kind of like witches that like witchy things from that area. But I really wasn't sure what it was going to look like in the end. And so I think that was the like coolest part for me to see how the theme of talking to your people and like supporting the people in your life remained, and the visual aspect of it was something that just developed kind of like as we went. And I thought that was really cool.
Um, I love that response because it shows like the difference of where I guess our point of view was coming into the project. Because I feel like my answer is kind of the opposite. I feel like I kept coming back to my connection with the place itself. And driving through the backcountry roads, you guys got a little taste of that when we were commuting over to Albemarle, where our site was. But just like driving back and forth in the region, and the familiarity with knowing visually what it felt like to be a person who has, my skin complexion and exist in the dynamics that are, Southern Appalachia, that are, the South and rural spaces. I think that's what I kept coming back to because I wrote this down. For me, I kept coming back to the aesthetic of a group of friends in unfamiliar territory, but they did not let the territory keep them from being themselves in the space. Because I think that that was kind of like a core essence of this. Like we're placing this group of friends that have this bonded connection and rapport and fun and they're goofy and they have this great chemistry. We don't want that to be broken apart based on the setting and let the setting define and rupture who they are like as characters. But when they get in the house, obviously, like that's where some of that psychological logical reckoning starts to happen. But for me, it kept coming back to this sense of this group of black friends, of just friends who are in place in this place that's like very rural, that's very disconnected from the greater society. What does that uneasiness feel like? Like from each site we were on, like I like spending time there was kind of like almost a reality check of like how I actually felt must feel like how the characters feel in this moment at times. So yeah, I was really focused on my connection to the region, which was the North Carolina rural spaces, and how does it feel to be in that space, placed in that space. So I don't know if that
Yeah, I
answers the
think
question.
yeah, I think also the space or the place was also something that sort of was a driver for me, but more so in the sort of sense of place and the feeling. I think I really was honing in on this idea of a haunted place, a haunted location in the house, like physically, but also
Mhm.
this idea of feeling haunted or feeling as if there's this inner turmoil or these things that are intangible, but they're affecting you in this way. And it's this, elements of whether it's like self-gaslighting or insecurity or unsureness, and how can those be represented visually. So I think like taking on a lot of stillness in the camera and the aesthetics, a lot of like shots where everything is happening on screen and there's not a lot of outside movement, so you're sort of stuck in and forced to sort of really pay attention and sort of this again with the feeling of hauntedness, kind of feeling trapped or um, consumed by something, but something that's intangible or something that's imperceptible necessarily to the naked eye. So trying to sort of create that feeling throughout. And I think I tried to take on the feelings of the characters. In this film, we really focused on Nathan's story, but in the larger script, we go through the inner turmoil of the other characters. So thinking of ways to keep that idea in throughout, even though we're just focusing on one specific plot point.
Yeah, I feel like just kind of building on that too, Alma, like that's such a good point of we did take a larger script and condense it down. And I think trying to take a small portion of the script while still maintaining the like wide range of there's a lot of discomfort and uneasiness, right? But then I feel like we were still able to catch, to your point, Kayla, like the lightheartedness and like playful aspect of it too. So yeah, I just wanted to say that as well as you were saying that made me think of that. And then I'll jump into a question that I had prepared for us. Um, so when it comes to creating, I would love to know where you two are pulling from, whether that's emotionally or spiritually or mentally. And then just kind of like as a follow up to that, how did that translate to working on this project?
Mm.
I think in terms of creating, I often start from a point of interacting with existing media or like creating work that engages with um, images, media, anything that sort of exists already. So I think also in that same sense, I have an approach to working with Black people in media and Black representations in media and Blackness in general is an idea that's like rooted in this idea of refusal. I think because of a history of Black people in media, I think using refusal or an idea of unknowing, talking about things that are imperceptible, like I sort of was referring to before. And I think that shows up in this project the most in the final sequence where we have that narrative of Nathan um, and the appearance of the creepy man and sort of how that scene is quite abstract and doesn't follow a lot of conventions. We're sort of jumping throughout the house, jumping throughout place, and also jumping throughout time. We don't really have a clear sense of what's going on. And I think I really gravitate towards that idea of juxtaposition of that inner deep emotional reckoning that the character is going through, but it's somewhat hidden, somewhat obscured um, in the actual representation of what you see in the film. Like there's a lot of repetitive shots. There's it's not as easy to discern which character is which, especially sort of going around to that idea of the spatiality. Like Nathan's mind is all over the place. So in that sense, the shots, the edits, the cuts, they're sort of all over the place. He's all over the house. So yeah, I think searching all over the house to sort of parallels his intrusive, recurring thoughts that are just sort of coming in, but on the surface appear to maybe be static or still in that a lot of the actual emotional grunt or emotional work that the character is going through isn't as translatable on screen. Like that's something that's quite inferred and it's not as explicit. So I think that approach was something that sort of goes with this refusal that I tend to
Mm.
lean into.
That's really interesting, Amma. Um, I want to come back to the refusal piece, especially when we talk about creating with Black narratives in mind. Um, for me, the way I thought about this question initially, I was just kind of like, well, I could answer it two different ways because I feel like there are two different ways that I draw from myself to create. Like in the first place, the first one is like, who am I creating for? Which necessitates me to have to pull from a place in order to produce something, versus am I creating out of this intuitive self or this space of, that's just kind of at the mercy of like my bleeding self in the moment or like a joyous state in the moment where there's no expectation to produce anything. So I thought about that because I'm like when I'm creating based on like a deadline or a timeline or somebody's expecting or commissioning something, like I think that takes a level of putting myself almost in a can of a pressurized can, like kind of like what we did with this project of we had a timeline, we had a site, and we had, this amount of people and like resources to work with. What can you create and generate out of that space? And so something about that pressure, for me at least, kind of brings out an elevated sense of creativity because I have to. I have to be creative. You have to be, a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit crafty. So I think that generates creativity for me in that way. But I have to be surrounded by other creative folks. I feel like a lot of times too, like if you put me in a can by myself, I think I'll just kind of implode and just avoid it altogether and want to create anything. But if you put me in a can with people who I know who are also there for the same, desire of producing like something creative, we're given a timeline, we're given some pencils, and we're given, a few resources and say, hey, make something. I think that's where I generate the best things. But as far as creating just in general, like I feel like I don't really have to pull from a place because a lot of times it comes from me bleeding. And that's not always bad. It just means that like there's something excess there that needs to go somewhere that my hands need to put to something. And I've really put a label or a name to what that place is. I just know that when that excess starts to come up, I have to put it somewhere. Sometimes that's a new medium. Sometimes that is painting. Sometimes that is walking around the street and taking photos of things. But it has to go somewhere. It needs a place to live. So those are the different spaces I think I'm in when I think about creativity. And I think the space for this project was probably the latter, like kind of the can, which is really fun for me to be in with other people who are also in that mind of wanting to be creative.
Hmm. I really love your both of your answers for that. Because yeah, I feel like a lot of us. Well, I guess I'll just speak for myself. I feel like when I initially begin to create something, it's normally very personal and very much for me. But then, yeah, when you start collaborating with other people and you start thinking about where this product, I guess you would like the finished, piece is going to go, you start thinking more about what type of intention you want to put behind it and how do you want to tweak it a little bit since it's not just for you anymore. Um, so yeah, I feel like when I first started this, I mean, this was just kind of like, let's see if I can like create a story from top to bottom. And it was maybe just something where I wanted to push myself to create in a way that I'm not used to because this was the first screenplay that I wrote. Um, but yeah, I feel like as the project kept developing, I started thinking more about okay, this isn't just for me anymore. Like this is also for Black men and Black women, and so how do I want to modify this and put more effort into it in different ways that I wouldn't normally, like talking to other people and getting their insight and how it would feel like more authentic for their experience in addition to mine. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, so I really appreciate your guys' answers and I relate to that as well.
Yeah. I guess we can popcorn it.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna skip one of the other questions I had. I wanted to, for this particular film, what aspects of this film, House of White Lilies, for you set the tone of the genre that we were aiming for? like the most? Um, like what aspect about this film set that tone the most for you all?
Mm, that's a good question.
I think I
Did you want
have,
to?
yeah, I can go ahead. I think I have, I'm sort of in between two, but they're kind of related. I think for me, I think sound is always like the most important thing when I'm watching a horror film. Like I feel like it's the main driver for me in terms of building tension where it needs to be or letting things air out where they need to be. And I think they really help to create the pace. But sort of within that, I think also the dialogue, especially the dialogue, um, in the kitchen scenes, I think it adds a level of brevity to the sort of horror genre in that the dialogue is very lighthearted, it's very natural, it's very real. And I think that especially thinking about like the farmers market scenes and that sort of thing, like I think those really disrupt the genre in a really fun way that sort of in turn makes the creepier scenes more creepy because the other aspects of the dialogue is so like not creepy in that sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of your answer a little bit, Amma, with the audio. Um, like I feel like when I think of something that is really scary, it is something that I hear before it's something that I see. Um, and I think there's also something to stillness that, of course, can be peaceful, but I think can also be really eerie. And I really love how we were able to use some of the spaces of just letting the camera like pan on like the lake or some of just like the shots in the house even like there's not a lot going on and I feel like that aspect can make it really unsettling. So that coupled with like some creepy sounds, I think we did a really like awesome job at creating that feeling of being unsettled to yeah to like offset some of the like more silliness and lighthearted conversations that people had in between the more intense scenes.
Mm. You guys took really great answers. I would agree with both of the things that you all said. I also think, because Dana, one of the first things I was going to say was some of those in-between shots as well, that set the stage. But I won't, the sound, yes, of course. I also think some of those like smaller points, like the transition shots where people went from being in somebody's company to they're now a character left alone in a space, like specifically the scene with um, Nathan at the sink by himself, or the scene where Taylor walks off in the hallway by herself, because you go from kind of this interaction of like socialness, like heartedness, jokey, and now they're walking off, and when a character is left to themselves, there's like some sense of like tension that builds with that because we don't really know where they're going, what we're aiming for that, especially that hallway scene for me at least, like because that's kind of like the introduction to inside of the house when the character Taylor walks down the hallway and then walks out of the sight of the hallway, but then we're left to sit in the hallway without Taylor's character there. I think for me that builds a sense of like, oh, what are we still doing here? What else is about to come out this hallway? So I think even those subtle things that we built into like the transitioning of characters in the space by themselves, which I wish we could have even played more into, but I think those were scenes that kind of set the uneasiness of like a horror genre for me.
Yeah, I really love that perspective too because I don't even think when we were shooting it I realized how much we were having people together and then there's one person left there and then it's you're kind of just left with the house like I'm like, wow, that's really interesting.
Mhm.
It's very interesting that we did this. Alma, did you want to have one of your questions?
Oh
I
yeah,
also
I
have
can ask.
some pulled up.
Yeah, I think I'll also. This one's maybe might be a little bit of a shorter question. depending, this was definitely a labor of love in terms of working on the project. And I think we all put a lot of our, dedication, time, effort into it. But sort of on the flip side, I'm wondering what was most challenging for you during this project, maybe either creatively or like technically, um, the most difficult.
I think actually being on set and shooting and trying to work through that was the most challenging for me personally. Um, and also like probably my favorite part as well. So I don't even see it as like a bad thing, but um, I think just some of the like logistics of the order of scenes, like the way that we shot it. In hindsight, I'm like, okay, in the future, I would want to do things a little bit differently, just so that we have more time to explore in certain areas where I feel like this time around we were a little crunched on time at some point, just because it was a labor of love, and so there we were shooting until like what midnight, 1 a.m. and like Chansey had to get to work the next day. So there were moments where it was like, oh, I really wish that I could keep pushing a little bit more. But it's like, we also just have to respect that we've been shooting all day and we do have to go off and continue living like our regular lives in addition to this project. So yeah, I think that was probably the biggest challenge. And I think also just in hindsight, I would like to hear the script a little bit more out loud before we start shooting, just so I can make like small tweaks. So I think just a different challenge is me um, seeing how I could have done better as a writer in the process, and how I can make it better in the future.
Mhm. I have 2 points, not kind of piggy off of the last thing that Dana just said, but I think one of them was not having a run through of the script or lines with everybody who was a part of um, the film together. Even though we did do an official read through, I think after we shortened the film and condensed it, and then we confirmed everybody who was going to be a part of it, it would have been nice to give space to be able to run through that as a collective. Um, Also, I think for me personally, one of the more frustrating things is actually just was a lack of skill set. I think we were all growing through this process, but it can be frustrating when you don't have the skills or the language to be able to capture or communicate a desire to capture something in the way that you want to. Again, we were really scrappy, and Amma was amazing with bringing in a lot of the technical understanding with the filming process. Um, but I think for me, that was a point of frustration. It was like not having the language, not having the skills to be able to do this thing that is existing here in my brain. But I had to trust that there were other individuals who could, I could consult with to help bring it to life in that way. So that kind of alleviated some of the frustrations of that. I also think another frustration was just not frustration, but challenges, I think was um, because of the limited time, I think when you're managing lots of people on set, I think dealing with, making sure everybody's happy, not dealing with, like everybody wanted to be there and wanted to be a part of it. But I think finding a way to kind of manage those off-screen moments, manage those times where like, people are hungry or a little bit tired or somebody's coming right in because they're getting there a little bit late and they're thrown right into a scene. What are some ways we can help bring them into that space a little bit better? And I think a lot of this was just due to time. We didn't have the time to create that type of atmosphere, but I just feel like in the future, in shooting a film, I would want to pay a lot more attention to the atmosphere we're creating for everybody on set, not just those in front of the screen. And those who are holding up the equipment, like those who are off screen, sitting in the room, in the other room, like just other ways to make sure that like the entire atmosphere on set feels like everybody's being taken care of.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. I agree with the both of you. I think the timing continuity was also something that was new to me to like learn and how to balance that with, you know, we're all here, like you said, we're all like motivated and dedicated to getting this project done, but like how can we also, take care of ourselves in the process and not overexert ourselves in other ways. So I think like the like technical continuity of like which scenes to do and like how much time do we need to like maybe let sit and like really understand exactly what's going on before, we start to roll, and just everybody being on the same page at the same time in the same exact way, and really like having that communication up front all the time. But in turn, I think this was like such a great learning experience to have such a confined time constraint, um, or a time constraint, and just sort of learning and adapting on the fly. And through that, like I think moving forward, I'll be like much more aware of these things in that sense.
Yeah, I would say like the biggest challenge is just in a lot of ways, in a lot of different aspects, this was a first for a lot of us. I know, um, like Destiny's been acting for a while, so I won't speak for her, but yeah, there's just a lot of aspects of newness to the process and working on a short film like this. So it
Yeah, and
wasn't.
I don't know if you guys ran into this, and Alma, if this feeds into your question, just I can park this, but um, I also think a challenge for me, it kind of when I go into this idea of we are this, what Dana said earlier, like this story is not just about me. This is about, the characterization of black and brown like folks who we're going to potentially be representing. I know she didn't use those exact words, but when I think of that, I think there was a little bit of that consciousness of like, what am I producing and what am I perpetuating about, blackness, about black people. There's a lot of stereotypes about black people and horror movies. So there's just, or like black people even existing in the South and what that should look like and what it shouldn't. And I think there was one moment or a few moments for me where I really had to like challenge my own bias of like blackness and what that should look like. Like, for example, I know there was a moment where I was thinking about how I wanted the female characters to be portrayed and what blackness like that entailed. And this came down to just how they wore their hair, whether or not they should have natural hair or wigs on. And some of the characters might have desired to wear a wig, and some of them might have desired to have natural hair. But I had to check my own bias of like the representativeness of blackness can fit different molds. And so like that seems like obviously Caleb, but those are just little pieces of when you're in control of producing a story, how much are you allowing and inviting in of, once you actually get to the set of the other people involved with creating that story. So it wasn't just about my idea of producing and what, blackness looks like, and the ways that I had thought it up, creatively in my mind originally, but like how do the other contributors and the actors bring voice to that in a way that it changes and it molds and it's dynamic. Um, so that was something for me of like when I think about Black storytelling, one, I want to be always conscious of not perpetuating or feeding into any like problematic, stereotypes of how Black people are represented, but I also want to make room for just how dynamic we are as people. So yeah, that was just something that came to my mind in one incident. I don't know if that feeds into one of your questions, Amma.
Yeah, no, I don't know, like skipping around a little bit, but yeah, in general, I'm really curious about like Black storytelling and how working on House of White Lilies like influenced both of yours, like how you tell Black stories or your understanding of Black storytelling, both as like Black storytelling as telling Black stories, but also what it means to tell stories as Black people. Like I think I'm like right now, I feel like I'm sort of conflicted in a way, like you just mentioned, Caleb. Like, how do you go about like presenting um, stories and images of Black people, that are authentic and real and representative of actual people who exist in Black bodies, but then also how do you, create a story and not continue to perpetuate negative images or images that, are hindering, or, how do you sort of strike that balance, which I think we really did so well in this piece. Like it I think that comes across quite well. But I'm just curious as to how, like, this piece or just in general, how you think of Black storytelling.
Well, I think for me, there's a little bit of I don't know. For some reason, the word like agnostic is kind of coming to mind. Like in some ways, I wasn't really thinking about how do I want to say this? It's like I knew that I wanted this to be like a fully black cast, and so therefore it would be a black storytelling. But then outside of that, I don't know, I guess I was just kind of thinking about like my friends and my family when I was like writing these characters. And I feel like because I am surrounded by such a diverse group of people, like artists or, like my brothers are like in the military or um, people who are like kind of like working in corporate, like just people that are from different industries and like different areas of their life. Like black storytelling is also just storytelling, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of what I was thinking of when I was going through and like writing this and creating this is like no matter what we do, it's going to be black storytelling because we're all black and we're taking from our live. Well, I'm taking from my lived experience, and I feel like you guys have also shared that feeling too of like we're taking from our lived experience, and so that is going to be true black storytelling. Um, yeah, like at the heart of it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that sentiment. And that was something that came across my mind, like even when I was reading that question and writing something down, I was like, well, I actually wasn't thinking about blackness when we were making this. I was just thinking about some friends like shooting this film. But I think the reflection part for me came in about, you know, what the real what happens a lot of times is like there is a white audience. There is an audience that doesn't necessarily have the same amount of care with what they do or responsibility to what they do with the way that these stories are being produced or being, understood. And so I think there's a responsibility on my end that feels like not a responsibility, but there's just kind of like this space of like I won't always be able to control, how people take stories and run with it and affirm their biases, but I can do my best, at least in my work, to tell the full holistic story, from my POV and to make sure I keep it dynamic in this way of like it's not one-sided on either side of the coin. But I'm doing my best to create a holistic picture. Um, and so in whatever storytelling format I do that, I think that's just kind of what I come back to is like there's good, there's bad, there's ugly in all cultures. And so I don't want to overproduce like this idea that everything is romanticized in all aspects of my life in this black body. Like we have inner conflicts and disagreements over what blackness even is at times or what, our experience is. And so I think there's room for all of that to be shown. But I think my concern, which again I have no control over, is what an audience that is not rooted in that being what they take and run with to reaffirm things that can be harmful. So I don't think we do that necessarily in this film. I think we do a great job of just telling a story that feels authentic to, what we created about three friends in this space. And there wasn't any like over messaging about any particular thing, I feel like. But I do, when I think about Black storytelling, I think that's my take is, be holistic and be as well-rounded as you can about it. And sometimes that comes with good, bad, um, and the ugly. But yeah. That's a challenging one, Alma, because I'm still sitting with that, like, because we can't control the audience, and a lot of times this work or these stories get in the hands of folks who don't have a good will for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like is part of like that's it's something that I'm thinking about, and I think we're all probably thinking about in some way or another, like as we make work in this sort of way. And I think I really like the word that you use, agnostic, Dana, in thinking about like the story is going to be the story, and it's going to be a Black story because that's the story that it is. And I think there's like the work that is created, like this film doesn't exist in a vacuum. Like it speaks to the history of Black films, Black stories that have existed before, and it's gonna, continue to talk to Black stories in the future. So I think like part of that is just reconciling with like, you know, once you create the piece, it then exists in the world, and the audience is left to interpret it and receive it, and understand it how they do. But then, as makers, which I think we executed really well, is taking on that responsibility of living in our truth and representing our experiences as they are.
Yeah. And I think it's such a good question for us, and I am really interested to see how people respond to it. Because I will say one thing that I think about just a lot in general for Black culture and Black media is even if you see Black people on the screen, who's behind the screen, who wrote it, who is directing it, who is like making the decision of like what scenes make it, what song makes it to the album, like stuff like that. Um, and I think in the past it has been hurtful to the Black community, and it has like created a lot of stereotypes or maybe like unfair impressions of like what it means to be Black. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how people feel about that, but yeah, I do feel like we all tried our best to be responsible in creating this story, but still staying true to who we are as Black people.
Also, Dana, thank you for saying that because I feel like you, I'm sorry, never mind. I appreciate that you said that because in the back of my mind, I was just saying, like this shows the importance of we need to be the ones telling our stories. Because as natural as it felt, of like we didn't have to necessarily think about where to pull from source material and how to construct something that's authentic to our lived realities. We just projected our lived and pulled from our lived realities. And I think that's why anybody who's telling a story, it's really important that, it's not stories about us without us. It's stories that, we are the ones telling those stories. So I think that this just adds to um, the mix of film that's about us that we told. I know we're getting close to the time here, but I think we had one fun question from, did we get a question from somebody in the,
Yeah. So, one of our followers asked, "What other films did you take inspiration from when creating this film?" And I really loved this question, and so I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go ahead and give my answer. Um, because Amma, you sent us his house,
Yeah. Hmm.
and so then Kayla and I think we watched it like the same night that you sent it, and I loved getting to watch that film right before we shot ours because I feel like it really like encapsulated like the creepiness of the house and like just like how unsettling like just human bodies can be like because I think in that movie like there's no like real monsters like it's really just like showing how scary other human bodies can be. So I really want to like give a shout out to that film, his house per Alma's recommendation was a great inspiration for shooting this film.
it was spooky.
It's
Hmm.
spooky, very unsettling.
Yeah, that was.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, I think so for me, I wrote down four different TV shows. They're not movies. I actually none of them are horror films. I think I was just thinking stylistically of what inspired the like way that I stylistically was thinking about this film. And so I had this idea of kind of like a more of a disgruntled approach, more of like a like character POV type of style. And so I like the show Bear, how they do that. And I also like the tone from like the show Grand Army. I don't know if anybody's seen that. Um, and then I think when I think about the character development, what inspires me is I'm really inspired by shows like Forever and Insecure. And I just like the vibes and energy from those shows. So those were in the back of my mind when thinking about this project.
That's so interesting. You said the bear for the first one. Like, what from that show were you kind of like pulling from?
I kind of liked the like it was kind of this work of like grunginess and like realness, and it felt like we were there with them. And I don't know if we got all the shots in the way that like my mind was picturing it when I was thinking about Bear. And I know there were some different technical tools we couldn't quite use in the way we wanted to use them. But I think when I was picturing of different shots, like the movement of being with the characters and a little bit of the chaos like adds to kind of the lore of the show. So especially season one of The Bear, I think they do a really good job of capturing the inner chaos, but also making it feel so real. Um, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned Insecure. I didn't think of it before, but now that you said it, I feel that's such a good like reference. For me, I think like early on, like in terms of when we were like storyboarding and thinking about the shots before we actually filmed, I was inspired by like some Japanese cinema, thinking about like Ozu, and how he sh films like interior scenes of like sort of letting the camera sit and showing the full picture. Allowing the characters to sort of exist within the scene and move and sort of live and
Mm.
do their thing with the camera sort of being a sort of positioned observer off, in a certain way, keeping the camera sort of low and having angles that are a little bit more like not as dramatic or super like high angled or super crazy in some way, but sort of nodding to the realism and the naturalness of the characters on screen. And then afterwards in the editing, I specifically seen like the scene with Nathan and like running up and down the stairs. There's this film called Meshes of the Afternoon, and I might send it to you guys. It's like 15 minutes or so, but it's like one of the first avant-garde American like abstract films or whatever, by this woman, Maya Deren. And it's like a lot of repetition, a lot of sort of like this character is like experiencing some sort of inner, turmoil, but it's represented in a lot of repetition that I think is really uncannily similar to what we did in House of White Lilies, which is really cool.
Yeah, please send it.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I actually, too, you saying that, I thought of another film that I was really thinking a lot about, which is not horror, and it is In the Mood for Love. Um, and yeah, just the way that they shot things, it was very like dreamy, kind of like what you were saying, Amma, like this
Mm.
kind of feeling of repetition, and you're not really sure how much time has passed, like what is the like chronological order of some moments. But then it also just looks in the mood for love. I think it's just like a really really beautiful film, but I feel like the way that they shot it is just kind of like different. It's a different perspective than you would normally see like a movie just going straight, top to bottom. So I just wanted to shout out that movie too because I really loved that and was thinking about that a lot when we were shooting, especially like the farmers market scene. So I think we're at our hour. Is there any last words or last questions that we wanted to go over?
I do want to reiterate like one thing that like I really truly admired about this whole experience was the improvisational aspect of this project, like and everyone's willingness and motivation to be improvisational. Like we had to work around a lot of stuff. We had to create on the fly, adapt in real time, and I think I felt a lot of trust among you both and among the rest of the cast and crew in making decisions. And I feel like despite all the conflicts and everything that came up, everyone was really open and willing to come up with alternatives or find a way to pivot without animosity, without a lot of panic. Like everyone was really dedicated to, committing themselves to the project in a way that like I felt really supported throughout. So just want to thank y'all all for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely
Thank
agree
you.
on that. Yeah, I feel like the whole process was just so amazing. Um, and yeah, for all of the challenges, I feel like there was never a moment of like egos clashing or really any like disputes with interpersonally. Like any challenge that we came across, I feel like was very outside world, and we all just worked together to try to figure out like what's the best way to move forward. So I agree. It was a really special project and a just a beautiful moment to come together and create this with you guys.
Yeah, I won't add too much more. I echo those sentiments. And I'm also just, y'all, I still to this day, I'm proud of the fact that we completed the project within less than a year. I think that's so easy with projects of labor and love like this, where we don't necessarily get any extrinsic rewards for completing this project. Like, um, it would have been easy at many points to fall off, to just be like, okay, we don't have the time, or, we'll push it back, we'll push off the timelines. But we kept showing up to our meetings that we set for ourselves. We followed through with, getting our editing done, the timelines we set for ourselves. Like, we obviously had grace for it, but I'm just proud of us for finishing the project. And whatever that means for future projects, I'm excited to see. But like, it's really cool to see something all the way through from start to finish. And I think that that deserves way more praise than we probably sit down and give ourselves, because maybe we're not getting, the feedback and the way that, I don't know, films might get that. But whatever happens with this film beyond this place, I'm just glad that we finished it. And I'm happy with what we did. So yeah.
Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining. For you know, we all organized this and decided to come together. So like, I'm just really appreciative that we decided to talk about this post editing. And yeah, like you said, Kayla, like we finished the project. So it's really crazy to say like we were finished in a way. Like
That's
I
a
know
wrap.
yeah,
That's
nothing
all right.
there's more to come with it, but like we've done the thing. So yeah, thank you so much.